Are you still ready to go, David?
Always ready, Stuart. Always ready.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm as ready. The frequency with which I am ready is the frequency equals the frequency with which dumb questions come out of your mouth.
Daniel, what's up, man? How are you?
Good to be with you, brothers.
Yeah, you too, man. Hey, this is Filling the Storehouse podcast. I think all of our listeners probably know that, but I'll say it anyways. And we have an amazing guest to talk to tonight, Dan Mackett. I was introduced to Dan by a fellow brother in our mastermind group, and Dan and I connected and just had an amazing conversation. And I was like immediately like, we got to have you on our podcast. So here it is. I'm excited about it. But before we get into this conversation, I know, Dan, you're a new father of recent, and so you're gonna get these as your kids get a little bit older. I got some new jokes for my 6-year-old that just came to me recently. She's in kindergarten.
Let's hear them.
And she gave me some new jokes that I think are pretty good. All right. First one. This is a good one.
Do we have to laugh?
You have to laugh.
Okay.
But you're gonna laugh. How does the moon cut his hair?
I'm so bad at these. Nothing.
Eclipse it.
Eclipse it. It's good.
Pretty good.
All right, one more. What do you call a fish wearing a bow tie? A fish wearing a bow tie.
Fish wearing a bow tie?
Yeah, what do you call a fish wearing a bow tie?
I don't know what it says about me that I literally can never think of the answer to these, but
sophisticated. It's good, right?
That's good, dude. No, it's great.
That was good.
That was great.
All right. Now
your 6-year-old's pretty smart.
She is pretty smart. I'm proud of her.
Questioning whether or not her genetics are the sources truly in front of you right now.
Yeah. Right. Well, Dan, welcome, man. It's good to see you. Good to have you on. And I'm excited about getting into your story, your background, and just for our audience, if you could just tell us a little background about who you are, and where you got started on this journey, and then kind of lead to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all starts back in Wisconsin. So I'm originally from Wisconsin. I am a pastor's kid. So you can think of whatever comes to mind when you hear pastor's kid, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But no, by God's grace, it was a good thing for me. So I grew up in Milwaukee. My parents love the Lord. I came to know Christ at a young age, but yeah, I think really what characterized my story was unfaithfulness in middle school and high school. I had the wrong friend group, struggled with just deep-seated anxiety and panic attacks, and I just tried to hide that by living for the world and pursuing my own pleasure and my own desires. And so what shaped me leading into college was really I was a caddy. So I was a caddy starting at age 11, and that meant I was surrounded by the wealthiest guys in Milwaukee. So I caddied week in and week out every summer for the wealthiest guys in Milwaukee. And, I can't say how they viewed their money, but from my perspective, it looked like they had it all. They drove in their Lexuses and Beamers. They spent the weekend at the country club, which was like a $50,000 joining fee. They talked about their jobs, their vacations. I knew where they lived. And it was like, wow, that is what I want. That seems like what life is all about. And if I can get to where they are at, then I've made it. I'll be satisfied. And so through actually caddying, I got a scholarship to go to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which by God's grace was where I wanted to go. And so heading into freshman year, had two intentions. Intention one, have a lot of fun. It's a big state school. And so they're known for fun plus academics. Usually those don't go together, but somehow they do. So I wanted to have a lot of fun. And then secondly, I wanted to get into the business school and then make a lot of money. And Jesus kindly did not wait too long to destroy that vision in the best sense possible. And so day 2 of college, you can ask me the details another time, but long story short, yeah, just through really actually a panic attack where the Lord met me just with tremendous mercy and patience and kindness, and gave me a peace that surpassed all understanding. I realized I needed to really turn and start walking with him. And then I realized really for the first time that in my anxiety, in my pain, in the suffering that I was trying for so long to hide, Jesus really does care, and that I can go to him with those fears. I can go to him with those anxieties. So that first semester was marked by this: I want to follow Jesus, but I'm surrounded by people who don't want to follow Jesus, and I hadn't yet got connected to those people on campus who did follow Jesus. And so that first semester was a struggle. Went to Passion 2012, which was a large Christian conference, and just came back really on fire for the Lord, and by God's grace got connected to some guys in Crew, Campus Crusade for Christ, who started discipling me and pouring into me and teaching me to read the Word and fight sin and share my faith on campus. And it was that was one of the sweetest seasons really of life, just experiencing Christian community for the first time, and honestly too, understanding the mission of God. And slowly but surely through a lot of painful pricks, him kind of reorienting my heart towards building his kingdom instead of building my own. And so this wasn't I heard a sermon and then, oh great, I view business as a means of mission, but really being in the business school and wrestling with, it seems like what I need to do to be a good Christian is go to the mission field after college, but I'm in the business school. That's where I'm gifted. And so it's always this wrestling of like, do I just fund the people who are going to do missions and then, do my business, be in the business world? But thankfully, senior year, we had a new crew staff member who had been 30 years as a BP executive come to Madison and be the assistant dean of the business school and part-time crew staff, which was just a really unique combination. So he had this experience following Jesus in corporate America, and he was pouring into especially business students who were involved in crew. And so he took a group of guys, my best buddies, who were all going into mainly consulting, but also some engineering fields. And he took us through just Every Good Endeavor and other books, just about what does God say about work, and how does he want us to view our work as a place where we are his faithful ambassadors, both displaying the fruit of the gospel in our lives as the Spirit produces the fruit of the Spirit in us, as well as a chance to proclaim the gospel to really, in the marketplaces where most of us are going to spend most of our time around lost people. And so we're going to spend 50% of our waking hours at work around people who don't know Jesus. And if we just think that we're just supposed to do our work well and then leave and go, give to the church, we're missing out on the mission of God. So God was so kind to just really start helping me think that way. Not that I knew everything then, and I definitely don't know everything now, but slowly but surely starting to give me vision for that. My senior year also, I had a chance to start a coffee shop, a little pour over bar, to raise money on campus for an organization called International Justice Mission that I was passionate about. They fight human trafficking and other forms of injustice around the world. So this was my first taste of kingdom entrepreneurship, leveraging business through coffee as a means of bringing people together, talking about Jesus, and supporting a good cause. So that was kind of sowing seeds for what I'll explain in a little bit. Graduated, then moved to Chicago and started a management consulting gig with a firm called Baker Tilly. And for the next 2 years, the Lord, taught me a lot just about being in the business world and doing work faithfully, doing mundane work with joy, and trying to do it excellently and learn and be humbled and get humbled, as well as, try to be a faithful witness to my colleagues. Got married during that time, and then wasn't really looking to leave, was enjoying my time as a consultant. But the Lord opened the door for my wife and I to move out to DC. So about 4.5 years ago, in May of 2017, we moved out to Washington, DC area for me to lead IJM, that organization that I previously mentioned. I led their national college program for for 3.5 years. One thing I forgot to mention was in Chicago, I was a part of a church plant in a lower economic kind of Hispanic part of south side of Chicago. And I really saw firsthand how needed church plants in cities are. Like, especially, there's just so many pockets where there's just not a faithful gospel preaching church. Yet at the same time, it is so hard to plant a church. So I experienced firsthand, it was really hard to find real estate. It was really hard to sustain the church with internal funding, especially those first few months and years. And our pastors were doing so much because they were coordinating so many extra logistics for the real estate and fundraising that they really didn't actually have enough bandwidth to simply pastor, which is what they were called to do. So that was my first experience of, wow, we need to think seriously about planning more churches, but the way that we're doing it now seems really hard in cities. So fast forward, when we got to DC, the Lord was kind to just put us in a really great church. And yeah, being there for a few years really increased my love for the local church and our desire, my wife and I's desire, to see more and more healthy churches, particularly in cities. So, I'm not going to pretend to be smarter than Tim Keller on any level. That brother is a gifted pastor, and he takes complex ideas and makes them simple. But one thing he talks about so well is planting churches in cities is one of the most strategic ways to make new disciples generationally. So reaching the next generation who is flocking to cities, as well as geographically. So the nations, he's in the context of New York City, but the nations gather in cities. And so if we're going to fulfill the Great Commission and reach the nations, we need to be able to plant new churches, which statistically new church plants make new disciples far greater than existing churches who are kind of plateaued. And I'm not going to say taking things easy, but there's just a sense of, when you're in a church plant, everybody is very outward focused. You're very evangelistic. You're bold in sharing the gospel, and God uses that to draw people to himself. So if we're going to fulfill the Great Commission, get the gospel to the nations, get the gospel to the next generation, we have to plant more churches in cities. Well, I mentioned it previously with my experience in Chicago, but being in DC, I had the chance to just talk to a bunch of church planners and pastors in the area as I was just really seeking to grow in my own faith. And what became really clear was it is extremely hard to not only plant, but also sustain churches in cities. Primarily three main factors. Number one, financial. The startup costs are high. So if you can raise $750,000 for your first 3-year budget, if you could do that, then how do you drive the sustainability? How does a congregation quickly start supporting $250,000 a year? That takes a lot of people, and a lot of people with the capacity and actual desire to give. So financially, there's roadblocks. That's also coupled with real estate. Landlords don't want to work with new churches. They're risky. They're not a value add to their portfolio. If there's in a strip mall, church is not that highly desired client because it sits empty Monday through Saturday. And so it doesn't bless the other businesses per se in that area. And so many churches are forced to hop around from place to place to place, which is not only expensive, it's also exhausting, both for the congregation as well as especially the pastors. And so there's not a great real estate. And, some may say, hey, there's a bunch of dying churches, unfortunately, that are leaving church buildings. That is true. But if a new church plant is going to inherit a dying church, typically what that means is it's a dilapidated building that needs millions of dollars of work. So it's not actually a wise decision for a church plant to take this old building that needs a ton of work and to still sit primarily empty throughout the week. As well as a lot of church plants meet in schools. That's become increasingly hard with COVID. COVID has, especially every school district is different and there's politics involved, but a lot of schools, unfortunately, are no longer letting churches meet in them. And so where's the church going to gather in cities? So financial, real estate, and then I mentioned it briefly, but pastors need to be freed up to actually pastor. They will do it because they want to see the church blessed. They don't want to spend time always fundraising. They don't want to spend time renegotiating leases every 6 months. Like, that is the things that take them away from the work of the ministry. If you think about the apostles in Acts 6, they established the office of deacon to continue that good work of blessing the widows in the congregation, which was a need. That's not a lesser work, but they needed to be freed up for the ministry of the word and prayer in a unique way that God had gifted them to do. So in the same way, how can we come alongside pastors and actually free them up? So really, after thinking about that end of the spectrum of, okay, we got to plant more churches and cities to get the gospel to the nations, yet church planting is really hard. All of those barriers lead to about 30% or more of churches end up dissolving after 3 years. And so, unfortunately, all of those barriers oftentimes just lead to burnout and or the church not being able to make it financially. Yet here's the dichotomy. You have the church planting world, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have churches that God has blessed with buildings. And I just did I did a study about 2 years ago and found that evangelical churches in the U.S., so gospel preaching churches, so denominations in the U.S., are spending about $5 billion a year on real estate that sits empty throughout the week. So that was just assuming that a percentage of the building wasn't being utilized. Obviously, some churches do a phenomenal job of using their space throughout the week. This is not an accusation. This is just a reality that a lot of church buildings sit vacant. Non-believers are not entering into those buildings. They're no longer the community centers of which they once were. And we're spending $5 billion a year to keep those buildings empty, yet church plants can't fund themselves and they can't find real estate that allows them to reach neighborhoods that don't have gospel preaching churches. So really about, and this was like years of the Lord. So I'm trying to summarize like years of heart work in me and trying to have conversations and figure it out. And there's some, so really what became clear was, how could we come alongside and create a new model that is more scalable as well as sustainable to plant churches and cities? And what we found was there was great organizations, particularly local churches, doing one-off examples of, hey, a church owns a coffee shop, and that's generating revenue and bringing lost people into space, and then the space isn't sitting empty. Or there's examples of co-working spaces or fitness centers or schools. All of those are great examples, but nobody was thinking about it from a scale perspective. And oftentimes when a church was running those businesses, the lines of separation for the business being able to do what the business needs to do in such a way where it's successful and sustainable, as well as the church being able to do what it needs to do. When the church owned the business, that just is really hard to do well. Not a ton of pastors or even leadership teams are equipped to manage the functions of the church while at the same time running a successful business. And so through a lot of conversations with folks, the Lord led us towards starting an organization about 2 years ago called Redemption Collective. And our vision is to make church planning scalable and sustainable in cities through business. Really, in short, what we do is we buy commercial real estate, we run small businesses in that commercial real estate Monday through Saturday and design it so that the church can gather there on Sunday. But not only gather there on Sunday, be patrons and promoters of those small businesses throughout the week so that they can meet and rub shoulders with their non-believing neighbors. So right now, the businesses that we're talking about are coffee shops, co-working spaces. Eventually, I could see us, having a fitness center or a childcare center, really relationally oriented, recurring customer bases that are value adds to neighborhoods, that are value adds to communities where the churches are being planted. So through that model, we eliminate a lot of those barriers that we talked about, and we free up financially for the church to now be a way less than market rate tenant on a long-term space. So it's not a 6-month lease, but we're designing it with them with 10 years in mind. So this isn't just a quick 1-year stepping stone. This is a building that we've had a lot of conversations about. Hey, if the Lord would do this, here's where we'd like to be in 10 years. Therefore, we can imagine us doing ministry in this space for a long time at less than market rate rent for a building that they would not have been able to acquire on their own when launching. not just financially, but evangelistically, because now the building is actually bringing the mission, if you will, like the people that God is calling us to go and proclaim the gospel to into the building. These are secular facing businesses, run with gospel intentionality. So we want to bring these people in, and the church can rub shoulders. And then lastly, since we're the ones running the businesses and we're the ones managing the real estate, now the pastor is freed up to preach the word and to disciple, to get to know his neighbors, and to not be juggling a million things. So our vision is to really create a plug and play model that church plants in strategic cities around the U.S. Can leverage to scale. What if every church planter was sent out with a lead Christian entrepreneur who's gifted in business, passionate about the local church, and that entrepreneur could launch a business that blessed the local church in those ways? So we're really just getting started. I probably sound like we've accomplished a lot. We are just getting started. That's really our strategy. There's a lot more there, but I'll stop and let you guys ask questions, and we can pick it apart.
No, that's there's a lot there, right? That you everything from the fact that you grew up in Milwaukee, where Stu and I do business, to you went to school where my wife is from, and to this amazing business thing. And what, a couple of things struck me. One, you're attacking two extremely high failure rate things. One, church planning, right, and having a sustainable church, and which is extremely difficult. And then two, being an entrepreneur is also the numbers do not support a high success rate, right? You have whatever the numbers are, just a huge failure rate, but you bring those two together and are creating a model that is sustainable, scalable, and I think that's amazing. And my question is, like, when you kind of break into the structure of it, so does your business effectively, is it almost like a Chick-fil-A model? Like, your business owns the real estate, your business owns the business, you're kind of running that, and then the pastor is almost like an operator who comes in and they are effectively renting space, or they're renting it on the weekend? Or how does, like, what does that model look like? Like, who owns the processes, who owns the businesses, where does the money go?
Yeah, great question. So I guess let me step back and talk a little bit about our church to market strategy, and then I'll kind of hit on those questions. So what's unique about our model is we're not just buying real estate, prime real estate in cities, and then once we've launched the co-working space, a year down the road, a church is like, oh great, we'd love to meet here. That would be great, and there are people who do that, and it's amazing. But we actually start with the church in mind. So the first phase of our process is church partnership. We want to get to know our potential church plant partners, be aligned theologically, talk about logistics. Like, a church that wants a lot of programming Monday through Saturday, there are a lot of great programs that churches can do, but with our model, increased programming really rubs against the business being able to operate in a way that's sustainable, which is actually the best way to bless the church in those ways that we talked about. And so we want a church that obviously prioritizes, the worship gathering on Sunday, and then has more of a scatter mentality of, hey, we're going to go be faithful ambassadors in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in the places that we work, and the coffee shops that we go to, and the gyms that we go to. So there's not this constant tension of the business versus the church in this space. So then we say, okay, great, we like this church partner. Let's look at the market that you actually want to be in. Is there demand for co-working? Is there enough demand for a coffee shop? And if the answer is no, that's just full stop. Like, we're not going to pursue a business model that we're not confident in, that our investors are not going to be able to get a return on it. Not only obviously a kingdom return, but a financial return. We want to be good stewards of what God has given us through them. If the answer is yes, though, then we look for a piece of commercial real estate. And this could be an industrial box. This could be a mixed use where we just buy off the retail on the ground floor. Like, whatever that particular neighborhood or city context, we're getting creative with the types of real estate, but we want to ideally buy. There will be probably some scenarios in the future where, we're working with a like-minded partner that will lease if it's a decently favorable lease term, but we want to buy and own the asset. yes, from a control standpoint, because then we can manage this partnership much better, but also our investors then participate in the appreciation of the property, and there's less risk involved, because these are operating businesses that don't have the best track record, I'd say, in being like 80% of coffee shops fail within the first 5 years. Now, a lot of that's an operator experience issue, but these aren't like tremendously high margin businesses. So by coupling it with the real estate, we're actually able to offer better returns. So once we've found the real estate that makes sense for the business, so from a location standpoint, from a design perspective, as well as the church, like if what we identify that the church would want to be 200 people within 5 years, and they need X amount of kid space, they want a staff office, if that building doesn't meet on those targets, then we need to find a new building. We need to expand our search. So it needs to work for both parties. Then we go to the impact investing capital raise phase. So right now we're in the midst of a capital raise in Richmond, where we're trying to raise about $1.65 million for a project that I can talk about in a little bit. But we're looking for kingdom-minded partners who are passionate about business and using it for the glory of God, passionate about the local church, want market rate returns, while at the same time putting their capital towards helping scale church planning. Once the Lord brings in the capital stack, then that's where we launch into our operating model, where so we own every deal is a joint venture LLC that owns both the property as well as the opco. So it owns the propco and the opco. Our investment partners are LP at that parent. So they own the real estate, based on their percentage of investment, and then they also own the operating company. Redemption Collective then is just the manager of both the opco and the propco, and we take a small management fee for our brands and for the actual work of managing that whole LLC structure. It's set up to protect the operating business from the real estate and protect the investors as well. So that's how we'll replicate each deal. Every deal will be that joint venture, propco, opco. Then the church. So the church is a long-term tenant on the propco. So they, for instance, for this project in Richmond that we're hoping to launch with the church there, market rate rent for a similar size design facility would be anywhere from $7,500 a month to $10,000 a month for what they'd have access to. We're talking $2,500 the first year, and then stabilized at a little under or a little over $4,000 from years 4 through 10. So if you look at in this particular project, if you look at startup costs, design costs, and then ongoing rent, we're going to be, Lord willing, hopefully saving the church over $1 million that they would have had to spend on their building that now can be freed up for missions and for planting more churches. So did that answer your question on the structure?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely went to the structure. That was great.
I need a whiteboard. That's the one thing about podcasting.
It's awesome. You're speaking our language if you do a whiteboard. No, I appreciate the clarity on that, because I think the business model is especially to a lot of our listeners, is equally important in the process. So Stu, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so you kind of hit on it a little bit, but you mentioned early on in your college career that you started a coffee shop, and then you moved to Chicago, and you told me that you've done a few more coffee shops. Could you just kind of talk about that side of the business, and one, why coffee, why co-working space, and how does that all work together? Like, why are you choosing those businesses to kind of focus on?
Yeah, great question. So I guess I owe the coffee credit to, I worked at this camp in Colorado, Camp Timberline up in Estes Park, every summer of college. And one of my buddies, we'd go into Fort Collins every weekend, and he taught me the ways of craft coffee, and I'm forever thankful. So
are you one of those coffee snobs?
Coffee snob.
I am. That's what people call me. I like to say connoisseur, but I guess snob is probably more accurate, unfortunately.
So
I'm the guy who
Colorado,
intentionally makes fun of people who drink Dunkin' and Starbucks, and
how about
I'll own
Folgers?
it.
How about Folgers?
That might be even worse than both of those, bro. The Lord created good coffee for a reason. Those companies just decide to ruin it. I'm just kidding.
Good.
But no, I'm more generous than that. But anyway, so he got me into good coffee. So I started that nonprofit called A Just Brew because we were supporting an organization focused on justice. But that model was different. It was on a college campus, all volunteer run, so student led, which is kind of cool in its own way, because now we've had like 5 sets of leaders at University of Wisconsin campus who are now running a business while they're still in school and getting that experience, getting that entrepreneurship experience. So it's a volunteer led craft coffee shop where students come in and enjoy really good coffee, and they actually donate what they want. So it's name your own price. 100% of the profits go straight to IJM. And so we've been able to give a decent amount of money by God's grace and connect students to, they have a passion for justice, but they don't know the author of justice. And so it gives us a platform for that. So by God's grace, I don't know why they said yes, but I formed a board of directors, and eventually the word got out, and we talked to some students at Illinois State University who launched another location. Some guys on crew staff launched a location in Portland, Oregon. They're crushing it. So is Illinois
That's
State.
awesome.
And now
man.
we're in discussions, and I'm actually rolled off the board. So the expansion is I'll give credit where credit's due to the current board of directors, but it's fun watching that grow from afar. So yeah, we created a model that's repeatable and really hits home at the kind of current college climate. But I'd say from a coffee perspective, and this goes to our intentionality of like the businesses that we're running for Redemption Collective, they need to be relational. Like it's not a one and done car sale, where you go every 10 years to get a car and then a couple oil changes. Like it needs to be a relational place where our staff and other people can get to know one another. Because if we don't have that relational component, then we're actually not going to be able to build those relationships and invite folks to church and have them over for dinner and hopefully share the gospel. So coffee is a relational business. It's also one that that I have experience in. And so, as we thought about Redemption Collective, it checked all the boxes in terms of the type of business and the space reusability. So you can design a coffee shop where the bar is on one side and you actually have a 2,000 square foot open space that you can have 100 people that meet in. And so it makes sense from a reusability perspective. Really a couple of years ago, started working at various co-working spaces, mainly WeWorks in DC with different friends that would invite me to join them for the day, and started to experience that business model and grew to enjoy it more really from a networking perspective. Like the collaboration that happens in co-working spaces is incredible. And as someone who's really passionate about obviously networking, but also, building relationships and pouring into people to help them think about faith and work. Like, wow, I was like, man, I love being at WeWorks. I get to meet new people and get to know them and hopefully, have conversations about Jesus eventually. And so I grew to love that business model from an experience standpoint. And then as we started launching Redemption Collective, it was like, oh, wait, this is a model that also could work really well. It's relational. Like the people in that space are getting to know one another in a way that they would have never known each other if they had all just been in separate offices. A lot of co-working spaces have big open spaces. And so it's like, oh, that could be a sanctuary space. And then conference rooms, oh, that could be Sunday school for kids. Like it just started to click. And then we started thinking about, okay, most co-working spaces have coffee. Most of them don't have good coffee, but they have coffee and they have expensive equipment that unfortunately they don't use properly. But I was like, man, a coffee shop and a co-working space would actually be a phenomenal value add business model to one another. From one thing, most co-working spaces have front desk associates. Now, if you design the building in such a way where the coffee shop is that entry point, our baristas can now serve as kind of that front desk associates. You don't need to pay a whole nother person. Our baristas can now just be trained to let people in and notify, the other workers of the co-working space or the members that guests are visiting. So we're able to save on operational costs on that front, as well as now we don't need to buy 2 sets of equipment, and our members actually get really good coffee by trained baristas instead of made by, a co-working manager whose coffee's not their passion. So there was just a lot of value adds, and I'd say one more as well, but Now the coffee shop serves as a lead generator for the co-working space because they can peek in and see what's going on. Also, we limit our Wi-Fi to an hour. So if they want more Wi-Fi, they can buy a day pass, experience the co-working space, and now we can work to sell them on a membership. So they're value add business models to one another. And so that's what it's like, okay, these should be our first two. We know people, we got to know a lot of people in the industry. They were kind enough to train us and teach us the business model over the last 2 years. And then obviously we can bring our coffee experience to the table as well. And now as we transition, we're not post-pandemic, it's looking like we're not going to be that for a while. But in this or new, I'd say the future of work, or I guess as people are calling it, co-working is actually going to become that much more needed. And we're starting to see demand rise for co-working really across the board. As companies move to hub and spoke models, co-working spaces actually become those spokes in a way where you don't have to acquire a 10-year lease on a space and manage the build-out costs. For people that their companies are now fully remote, actually studies are showing a majority of those folks want a hybrid model. They don't want to be fully remote. They want to connect with people. They want water cooler talk. They want to run into friends and have those intangible interactions with folks to develop relationships with them. So co-working provides those flexible membership options for that 2 to 3 a day a week for a person to come in, have really good coffee, have a space to work that's productive, that's creative, that allows them to potentially meet clients, etc. And then for companies that, especially small businesses and startups that don't want to take on a long-term risk of signing a 5-year office lease and managing that, now they can have 5 offices for their 5 employees. And great, if they grow to 10 people in the next 2 months because they're killing it, they can add 5 offices like that if space allows. So I think moving forward, our coffee co-working model is actually positioned pretty well, Lord willing, to kind of ride the increased need for what we're seeing.
So how many of these have you established at this point?
Yeah, so I left IJM last October. So almost a year now I left IJM, and some generous donors who are passionate about the vision gave some seed donations to get us to be able to leave IJM. I've got a 20-month-old son. We got one on the way, so people were kind of like, "You need some help." They were gracious to provide it. So we partnered with a church in Baltimore, and they're about a 3-year-old church, actually on church plant. They were potentially going to get kicked out of their space because the owner of the property wanted to triple their rent. He wanted to add tenants to the space. It was going to make it untenable for them. But they likely couldn't afford it on their own. And so we got connected. We helped put together a business plan, helped manage the acquisition of that property for them, helped secure the loan, helped them complete a capital raise for the building. And so that model was a little different, but it was a small pilot. So yeah, it helped the church get to this point where they didn't get kicked out, but they now owned the building, particularly because the businesses that we were going to run, coffee and co-working, could actually generate enough revenue to support the operations and obviously the other benefits that we talked about. By God's grace, the church had raised way more than expected in their capital raise. The Lord was just really generous. And so it just didn't make sense at that point to have a 10-year lease with us, given their I'd say newly founded financial position. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up launching just the co-working space in March. By God's grace, that's going well. It's profitable. It's only in about 1/3 of their building, so it's about a 2,000 square foot space. But it's profitable. It's helping pay for the mortgage month to month. It's introducing them to non-believers. Two of the co-working members already came to church, which is really exciting. And that
Awesome.
Literally all that's all God, because when I gave them the tour, I was just like, oh yeah, church meets on this floor on Sundays. And then they Googled it and checked it out, and then they came, which was really sweet to see. So we were going to do a coffee shop, but there was a lot of factors that it just didn't make sense for the church to take on that risk. They were going to be the owners of the businesses in that sense, or in that scenario. And as time went on and they were in a different position, they needed more space. There was no point to force something to happen. So by God's grace, it was a long year. I love those brothers up there. We learned a lot together. We saw God do a lot. Now they have a building that God is, blessing that ministry and growing it. And we got to pilot out at least a small co-working operation, build out our brand, work out some of the kinks, learn a lot more than anything, get sanctified a lot more than anything. And I think now through that, the Lord has really positioned us well. So we're focused on our next project. So there's a church plant in Richmond, led by a guy named Matt Smethurst. If any of the listeners are familiar with the Gospel Coalition website, he's one of the editors on the website. So him and his family moved down from Louisville to Richmond this summer. And then him and a guy named Sebastian Traeger, who, if you guys like reading books on faith and work, he wrote The Gospel at Work, which is another great resource that I'd highly encourage. And he's a serial entrepreneur. He started a couple businesses and sold them. So he's going to be a lay guy. And then another guy named Zane Pratt, who him and his wife are just incredible. If I have 10% of the godliness that they have, I'd be happy. But they spent 30 years in the Middle East with the International Mission Board and now help train all the missionaries for the IMB, which is located in Richmond. So those three guys are planting River City Baptist next spring. We got connected to them through a few of our board members, are good friends with them. My pastor knows them for the last 15 years. And so we got to know them. It just became clear, like, this is a great partnership, and they haven't yet launched, which is really ideal for us. So it would allow us to prove out our model of, can we come alongside a church plant and really bless them in the ways that we intend, and for us to own the real estate, for us to own the businesses, and really keep those lines of separation clear. So right now, we studied the market all summer, bullish on Richmond. I could talk about that for a long time, but I won't, because I don't want to bore folks. Looked at 35 properties. We found a property that we're currently negotiating on. So pray that the owner, who is a believer, says yes to our latest offer. We've gone through 4 rounds of no's, and so pray that he says yes. We had lunch with him on Tuesday, but it's this 18,500 square foot industrial box right in really the future of where all the development is heading in Richmond. Richmond's actually a pretty fast growing city, and just to give some orientation, the front 1,200 square feet would be the coffee shop. And then on Sunday, that's the hospitality foyer welcome area for the church. There'll be about 4,500 square feet of a business center, so conference rooms for the co-working space, designed with kids ministry in mind. So that becomes kids ministry. About 7,500 square feet of open flex space, so our flexible membership. So people that don't want a private office but want access to the space and the other co-working amenities. 7,500 square feet, and then it could be a 500 person sanctuary on Sunday. And then the back 6,000 square feet of the building would be 53 private offices, which is really the primary revenue generator. There'll be a couple offices for the staff of the church, but then the rest, small businesses, entrepreneurs, local freelancers, etc. And so to put this all together, we need 4.7 million total by God's grace. The debt, we've almost lined that up, and that's another miracle story in and of itself. And then we are in the capital raise process, so got about 2 to 3 months to, Lord willing, see 1.65 come in, 150s come in, and we'll keep knocking on doors, and hopefully the Lord will open them. But we're excited about this opportunity, and it's a good investment as well. We're projecting about 12% IRR over a 6-year hold, which is it's not going to be your most lucrative investment, but it's strong. It's going to beat, we're willing to beat the S&P and accomplishes our vision. So,
wow, that's awesome.
Freaking rad, dude.
Yeah.
So rad. I love it, man. I got so excited the first time I talked to you about your vision, and man, this is super cool.
When I think there's so many there's so many creative ways in which we can think about real estate. So I know the three of us are going to continue having conversations about, y'all are way more experienced than I am, but there's so many opportunities. If you think about mixed use multifamily properties, like what would it look like if Christians who are developing these mixed use properties, RC can come in and be the partner on the retail floor and run a coffee shop, which is a great value add for the multifamily and a co-working space. And now that church is ministering to the residents. I mean, there's so many creative ways in which we can. So if anybody on the call is or listening to this is interested in just collaborating and brainstorming, I'm not like, my posture is, let's not I don't need to recreate every wheel. Like I want to partner with kingdom-minded brothers and sisters who are already gifted and already further along in the journey. And if we can help out in some way to get more churches planted, like let's figure out a way to do it. It's not about Neighbors brand or Redemption Collective. It's about kingdom of God and working together. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. So that kind of brings me to one of the questions here. I mean, what does success look like to you? Like what is this all for? Like what's the big why? What's the purpose behind it all? I mean, besides just building the kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, right now, especially in this season of trying to get things launched, really I'd say success looks like being a faithful husband and father. I think it's a big temptation to always have my mind on the capital raise and always be thinking of new ideas. And it's like, no, actually, I just need to be a faithful husband who asks my wife intentional questions and who gets on the floor and plays with my son. And yeah, I mean, my pride is going to pull me away from that. So I'd say faithfulness to family, faithfulness at church. I want to be a faithful church member and in this season as well. But from a business perspective, we're going to be measuring different spiritual metrics as well as which, at the end of the day are not in our control. Like it's God's work to draw people to himself. But we do actually want to measure like, hey, how many new relationships were formed with members of the church to people they met in the coffee shop, to people they met in the co-working space? Did those people come to church? If maybe they got saved. Like we're going to be tracking those things to see how are these businesses actually advancing that evangelistic mission. I'd also say, from a spiritual perspective, how are our employees? So when I hire the coffee shop manager for the Richmond location and all the baristas and have support staff for the co-working space, if they're not Christian, how am I witnessing to them? Am I doing that faithfully? Are we doing that faithfully? If they are Christian, are they growing in Christ likeness? Do they feel the freedom and a passion to actually, honor Christ with their work and be faithful towards that end? Also success looks like, stewarding the resources that people are sacrificially giving to make this vision happen. Like we want to steward those resources well so that it can continue to multiply kingdom impact. And then from, at the core of it is I want to see more churches planted in unreached cities so that the gospel can get out. Like I want to see more beacons of hope where the light of Christ is being shown and proclaimed week in and week out. I really do think the local churches, I mean, there's many ministries and God uses all of us in different spheres, but the local church is his bride, and he wants to use his bride to draw his people to himself. And so I want to see the local church blessed, and I want to see pastors not burn out. Like I want to see them freed up to do what they can do and I can't, in some sense. So
such a good answer, dude. I love it.
Yeah, man, we could go for hours more. Actually, we will go for hours more off of offline. But hey, man, I have, and Stu talked about your guys' conversation. I was just completely fired up. I was intrigued because it checks a lot of boxes, right? First and foremost, our passion, desire to grow the kingdom, our passion, desire to see people saved, and how do we serve. And I love how coincidentally, or probably not so much, God plantedly, that your coffee shop's focus was on human trafficking and justice. And, I'm rocking the Exodus Road, just a group of people that we've just grown to love, and a mission that we support and are completely dedicated to. And, there's all these commonalities, but I'll tell you, man, it just, the creativity, of what you're doing and just the passion and the heart is so inspiring. Man, I love it. And I envision a very prosperous future from the perspective of raising money, getting these churches planted, getting some amazing business in there. Maybe I'll drink a good cup of coffee and I'll know what that means. Cause a 20-year Navy career. Yeah. I don't know, man. We're not known for our good coffee. We're known for,
we go
coffee.
for the cheap stuff.
Hey, fun fact though, we had bought an espresso machine for the Baltimore project, and we actually bought it, and it was an amazing machine from the U.S. Naval Academy. So they had one of like the top tier machines called the
That was
Slayer.
After we were there. That was after we were there.
Way after.
Yeah.
So maybe they've upped their game.
Yeah.
So.
They must have.
Yeah. They must have, definitely. But hey, man, we're just we're fired up for you. We want to support. We want to connect with you. We want to connect our folks. However, that what that looks like in the future, who knows? But I think there's some awesome, just some great opportunities here to really invest and to grow in ways that far surpass just a return on investment. Into our wallets. It's something that, growing people, and I'm fired up, man. It's exciting, super exciting.
Hey, man. Well, yeah, I'm so thankful the Lord connected the three of us, and looking forward to many more conversations. And I mean, honestly, like, I look up to brothers like you. Like, there's so many guys who are doing this, who have done it for a long period. That's what faithfulness is. It's like, are you doing this for a long period of time for the glory of God? And so you guys set an example, and so excited to learn from and collaborate and see what Jesus does.
That's good stuff, dude. Well, hey, how what's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, best place would be, so you can check out our website, redemptioncollective.org, but honestly, just shoot me an email. It's just dan@redemptioncollective.org. I don't know if y'all can put them in the show notes. Feel free to just put the email in the show notes. Okay. And then if folks just want to learn more about Richmond, not just from an investment perspective, but just learn more about it, I'm happy to share our prospectus, and you guys can learn more about it as well. But yeah, would love to have conversations, just collaborate, brainstorm, and even hear what people are doing on who are part of this movement.
Yeah, dude, it's good stuff, man. Well, I know Goody and I are going to have more conversations with you for sure. And guys and gals, hey, Dan's the real deal. Like, this is awesome stuff. And if this doesn't fire you up, I don't know what will. So reach out to him. Hey, share this podcast. Take a screenshot of this, share it with someone who you think this would inspire, because this is what it's all about. I don't know, David, you got anything else?
No, man. I think it's, I think the ability and the opportunity, the heart to, even if it's not in a Christian context, that's for us, that is the pinnacle, that is what we're all about. But the opportunity and ability to use real estate to serve others is just an amazing principle. And I think that, this is obviously our focus, our passion, but just think outside the box. A lot of our folks on here are entrepreneurs. They're outside the box thinkers. They're motivated. They're passionate. Do something bigger than yourself, as we've talked about in previous podcasts. Take some action, find your passion, and do it. Right? Get after it. No excuse. No excuse, sir.
No excuse, sir.
Get it.
Amen.
Dan, thanks for coming on, man. It's good.
Hey, thanks, brother.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Ladies and gents, share this, screenshot it, give us 5 stars, like it, follow us, do all that stuff. But most importantly, go fill your storehouse.
Thumbs up, little hearts, little teary faces. I don't know, whatever the emojis are.
Laughy, ha-ha, tears.
Laughy, ha-ha, like, and make it a great day.
See ya.
See ya.